Summer had always felt called towards the ocean, the mystery of its depths endlessly fascinating her. It was this very mystery that compelled her to study marine biology. Summer yearned to understand how the salty, suffocating darkness covering so much of the planet could be so brimming with life. Outside of her classes, she also spent more than her fair share exploring the nearby coast, swimming farther each time she visited, and diving as deep as her lungs let her. And what she found there was even harder to comprehend, and even more so explain than anything her textbooks told her. Mystified, Summer followed this being deep into the depths, her lungs no longer limiting her. She had found exactly the mystery she had been looking for. I'm actually so nervous to share that. I love writing, but it's so terrifying to share. Am I being corny? Am I being interesting? I don't know. I'm not going to be the one to judge. I saw this quote a while ago about how as an artist, it's not your job to judge the work. It's just your job to make it. So you can be my art critic. Please be nice, though. Yeah, happy Mermay. It's almost over. I'm so excited that I'm actually going to be able to get this out in time. Right now I'm just doing the voiceover. Then it's thumbnail time, title, all of that, uploading, and then we'll have made it. Oh my god. So as you see, I have prepped this Monsterfest Frankie head. They have the dark hair and the blue skin that I was picturing for my mermaid, so they were a perfect base. I just went and separated off the blonde and the blue hair on the top and removed that, boiled the head, removed it from the body, the typical stuff. And now I'm marking out where the eyes for my mermaid are gonna go. And I'm just using a little lino cutting knife to carve into the head to make space for these pearls that I inherited from my grandmother. And it was a really long necklace, so I shortened it, and I've just had leftover pearls that I can use for craft projects like this. So the idea for this mermaid is actually really vague, and I was kind of frustrated with that in the beginning, because it made it really hard to research, because I was like, what is it going to be? And then at some point it clicked that this is just going to be a mysterious, who knows what, does it even make sense, deep sea kind of mermaid. Because I think that's fun. I think it's fun to be nonsensical every now and then. The idea for a deep sea mermaid actually came to me in a dream. I woke up and I was like, oh my god, deep sea mermaid, which is not like a new idea. It just, I had a picture in my mind that compelled me to make it. And often those are really challenging projects, but at the same time really satisfying ones. And she just lived in my head for quite a while. I think I came up with her around January, and I've just been thinking about her since. And at some point the idea for using pearls for her eyes popped into my head, and I thought it was just such a wonderful idea that I had to try. And I will say, I could have thought this through a little more, could have planned this better, because in the end, the pearls are really solid and easy to sculpt on top of and perfectly fine, but the soft vinyl head with holes cut in which kind of like disturbed the structural integrity of the head and made it feel more squishy than I like wanted it to be. And then the fact that I sewed the pearls in without any sort of armature to hold them in, interesting choices on my part, did not make it easy for me. Now we're going in and cutting off Frankie's nose, and I'm going to stop referring to them as Frankie, and now it's my mermaid. And the mermaid does not have a name, but I actually think she shouldn't have one. I think she should just be mysterious and kind of freaky, but also kind of pretty. One of my favorite things to like imagine in my head is ways that things can be beautiful to the point that they're scary. I think that's such a compelling interaction between feelings and also just, I don't know. I feel like, especially as a woman, I feel like so much of my life is spent trying to be pretty in a non-threatening way, and I think that's actually useless. I think we should be pretty in threatening ways, and this mermaid is my first step into putting more of that into the world, I think. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm talking about. Hope you're enjoying my rambles. So for a while, I wasn't sure if she was going to have a nose at all, but then sculpting the eyes, I just thought that the space in the middle needed to have a bit of height to it to balance out the eyes. This clip, I think the eyes look the prettiest here. I kept fussing with it afterwards, but they look so beautiful. She looks so cute, but I kept fussing with it. And I like how she turned out in the end, but I was working with the epoxy sculpt even though it was already setting, and so it started turning mushy on me with all the water coming in, and it was just not great. Anyways, now we're getting to the reroot, which was a very quick process because I only needed to reroot not even the full part line, most of the part line, and I'm using actually reused hair from Core Refresh Cleo, and I'm only looping like the very end around the rooting tool so that the hair remains as long as possible, and I'm plugging the heck out of the part line, it's the part line, right? Because I think in removing the old plugs I actually ripped it, so I was hoping that the glue and a thick amount of hair would keep it all together, which it seems to have done. And then I covered her head and took a permanent marker and just went a bit haywire. And I actually, that was my best video transition ever. I am using Frankie's hips, Deuce's hips, and then both of Frankie's knees, and then also some random arms that I have from some doll. The shoulders did not work. I tried to reuse the shoulder joints and it did not work. But I tried, and I'm just taking all these pieces and I'm going to connect them together to make a tail. Ooh. I'm going to progress. So we now have, I feel a bit like Sid from Toy Story. So I connected them together with wire and aluminum foil and epoxy sculpt, kind of the typical stuff. I also used some super glue whenever it felt necessary and used water to smooth it out. And I have never once reused shoulder joints and not have it absolutely screw me over. So I will be trying again in the future because one day I'm going to make it work. And there is our lady. And now I'm using batting and this pink fabric and this really beautiful blue, kind of shifty black to dark blue fabric, and I'm vaguely tracing around the tail, cutting that out, pinning them together, sewing through it, all of that fun stuff to make a tail. Because actually, so many people make mermaid dolls because Mermay comes around every single year, and yet I'm still not entirely sure how that I would go about making a tail that I actually like. Because the tails that are made out of segments, I don't know, something about it I don't like. And it might be that I feel like the paint is inevitably going to chip, and I just despise paint chipping. But then full fabric tails I feel like are maybe a bit floppy. Maybe I don't have strong enough wire. I don't know. But this is an attempt to find an in-between where I have the joints from the doll, but then also the fabric on the outside to make it all smooth. I think it's just hard to make a doll out of a fish, to be honest. But maybe it isn't. Maybe we've just normalized what a human doll looks like. I don't know. Tell me if you know. Tell me what you think. To make this tail have a nice amount of texture, I drew some scribbles on the back and sewed through those, kind of like quilting, just because I didn't want it to be too smooth. And in the end, I think I sewed the tail on a little bit too tight, which I'm kind of sad about because, in this clip, the fabric looks so beautiful, the way that it shifts. Yeah, here you can see. I just went with a back stitch, a very messy back stitch, and just stitched along all of these wavy lines. And I did my best. And it's not my job to critique my work. It's just my job to make it. And in the end, I'm actually quite happy with how she turned out. So happy even that I made a whole that I made a whole like illustrated intro, which was messily done. I will admit that. It's not my like most polished work, but I also don't think it needs to be super polished to function as a storytelling device. I really don't. That's my hot take. It's finished, and it really feels like I'm just handling a slab of meat. And now I've got this, doesn't it look so beautiful, the fabric? Pink fabric. And I'm taking it and I'm trimming it, and soon I'm going to glue over the little top row, because I was really kind of stuck on how to attach this fabric to the doll. So, spoiler warning, there's going to be a lot of glue. Later in the video, I'm going to show you actually how I made another kind of tail. Here, I'm scratching up the the sculpting on the stomach so that I can glue it down, and I'm going to later show you a very easy, very quick way to make a mermaid tail. But this is how it turned out. I think it's decently articulated. I think it's decently pretty and textured, and it doesn't need to be perfect. Eventually I decided I was just going to make the transition out of epoxy sculpt, and I made sure the fabric underneath was as thin as possible, and I tried to stiffen it with glue, and then I just sculpted on top, and I think it turned out fine. It seems solidly attached enough with all of the glue underneath. And then I used my old library card and a lino cutting tool to try and cut like a kind of finny ear out of her very human looking ear. In the end, it looked a lot like coral, which isn't what I was going for, but I still think it looks quite cool. And now we're on to painting. This is always such a satisfying part for me to edit, and I got it within 4 tries this time, which is maybe a new record, but also I wasn't trying to go too precise. I think in the end the color I got is a bit more greeny. Really, I'm such a nitpicker. Like, it's really not that big of a difference. Anyways, I'm using that to paint over all of her mods, which I didn't say it, but I've sanded the heck out of them. Some parts of the face are still a bit textured, and that is just because at some point I squeezed her face and cracked it and had to try and super glue it back together, and she was just never the same. This project had a lot of ups and downs. I've been working on her since January, and she's only done now. It's almost June. And that's fine. I love how she turned out. For her face, again, because I'm working off of such like a vibes and fantasy idea of what lives in the deep sea and not any real experience, I just tried to go off of the sculpt. And the sculpt just went off of what I felt looked nice. And so all the painting is also just, what do I think looks nice? But maybe we can talk a bit about the fact that her face is actually kind of nonsense. And that's fine. But why does she have 3 sets of eyes, 6 eyes total, when in the deep sea basically everyone is blind because you can't see anything anyways? It's too deep for the sun to get there. Why does she have 6 eyes? And you're welcome to come up with your own lore of how it makes sense. How I think it could make sense is that maybe she's a species that has changed and developed a lot through time. Maybe like a couple hundred years ago, mermaids could live closer to the surface and lure pirates. But nowadays, with like motorized ships and the, what's it called? The thing that like Nemo almost gets caught in Finding Nemo, things like that, it's a lot more dangerous for mermaids to be closer to the surface. So maybe they went deeper down and now they don't need their eyesight, but they still have their eyes. I don't know. And maybe they have the multiple eyes because the ones on the front I know are for like apex predators and the ones on the side are for like prey. And then the ones in the front, I don't know, maybe those are to connect with people. I don't know. But maybe they serve so many roles within the ocean ecosystem that they just need so many different features to survive. I don't know. I'm making stuff up. I studied illustration, not biology. Though I do think biology is really interesting, but I do not have more than high school knowledge. If you have any cool reasonings for like how this mermaid's anatomy could work, let me know. And if it's actually like just nonsense and could never make sense, also let me know. I think that's funny. I just made it to look cool. And I actually think it's really fun how she looks. I like added all these dots and lines to just give more texture to the sculpt. But then I decided her lips looked too normal, so I like used the base color to kind of cover up some of the face, and I think that turned out really fun. And throughout this whole process, you might have seen I only used the color that I mixed to cover up all the sculpting, along with a yellow and a blue, and I just mixed with those three colors, and I think it made for quite a cohesive face, while at the same time leaving me space to experiment with like lines and dots everywhere. And once I was done with the painting, I used a little needle to scrape the paint off of the pearls really carefully, and then I used some Liquitex acrylic matte varnish diluted with water to seal it all in and protect her. I've been like crunching these last couple days trying to make sure that she would get done in time. So since the last clip you saw of her, I have given her a boil wash, which this varnish handled so beautifully. And then I trimmed the little blue bits in her bangs, which I think like it's a bit silly. Who decided that she has bangs? How does she have access to human hair trends? And I'm going to choose not to worry about that. This looks messy. Let's have a little tour. So her hair honestly stresses me out a bit because I just have no idea how it's supposed to sit, especially with her face. It kind of covers most of her eyes, but she has the sculpted on face bits with the paint and the pearls, which are just so fun to look at. Like, I love moving her around and watching the light reflect from the pearls. Then she has her very interesting little lips and her corally ears that her hair keeps getting stuck in. I think her like body paint is really pretty. And then I managed to preserve some of the transparency in her fins, which I'm really excited about. And then we get to the tail, which in the end, I wasn't able to give it that much texture, especially around this bit for some reason. But I think she's so cool. And the tail fins, they're not very realistic. They don't look as if she'd be able to swim with them, but I just think they're fun. And they can like spin and go like this, and they can go like this. And then articulation wise, she's not the best. Like, okay, this can go like this, and then if you want to, you can like kind of spin it or like twist it so that the knees can bend, because the knees can't bend without spinning this way around. But then for the back, she's quite a bit more articulated. Like, she can go a lot further. And I think this looks pretty good, but I just used some like stitches to close this up. And as a fun surprise, as if I haven't done enough work yet, I also made Summer a mermaid tail. I imagine she follows her into the deep sea and somehow becomes a mermaid as well, and they can live happily ever after, and they're like the sun and the moon together, and it's so wonderful. And after this clip, I'll insert some clips showing you how I made this as a little bonus at the end. But look at her face. Ugh, I will never get enough of this face. This is the best face I've ever painted. And next to each other, they look absolutely mad. But I think that's wonderful. I think that's perfect. If you're interested, I will put both of these for sale up on my Etsy as soon as possible. Thanks for watching. Bye! I'm going to grab Summer and lay her out on this. This is a stretch fabric, so it isn't very, like, you don't have to be super precise, but you just want to kind of layer at the side and then trace around her. One of my first doll customs ever when I was still a little kid was also a Cleo, actually. and I just painted her face and then also gave her a mermaid tail. So we're going to make this about the size of her waist. And this is how I made that first doll into a mermaid. And I also have this little scrap of a soft pink fabric that I think might work for the bottom fin. I'm going to use this craft glue and just add the thinnest little stripe along the edge to seal it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew this little seam here at the top. Am I? Yes. I'm going to sew a little casing here at the top. I'm going to insert the elastic and then I'm going to sew it into a loop. I'll show you. Okay, I have the top little pocket sewn that this will go into, and now before I move on, I actually want to find a color that matches this, which is still drying with the glue on it. I want to mix a paint that matches this and add some little details to this. So now I'm going to take this and I'm just going to paint little scallop shapes. And we're going to keep it real simple. I would say that's good enough for me. So I'm going to put that away. I'm going to take this and add some lines to it. Okay, so I've made some more steps. I have gathered this in the center and sewn a backstitch to secure it. And I have started connecting this together. Here at the top, I have made sure the elastic was caught and I just started sewing. The thread broke, so I moved here. I'm going to tuck this inside. So I want it to be like this. So I will go like this, tuck it like this. And now I'm going to sew through here, sandwiching this in this seam. So it's attached like this now, and the bottom is sealed. And now I'm going to tuck it inside the tail and continue sewing my way up. I'm going to backstitch all the way up to here, and then I'll be back. And there we go. This is how little 10-year-old me made her first ever mermaid tail for a doll. So ideally I would have added a second layer of fabric because it's so see-through, but I'm okay with this. It's a bit tricky with her feet because they keep wanting to slide out of alignment with each other. But that's a little mermaid tail, and she can sit and I think it looks cute. I think it's wonderful. I think it's adorable. Okay, that's all.